Oh boy. Never know where it's going. Never know. Welcome everybody on this last, well, it is the last day of September, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so you all get to hear this wonderful talk tomorrow on the 1st of October, right? So that will be very, very nice. Before we go on, we want to emphasize those who couldn't be here because of other responsibilities, not social, but they were veterinary kind of duties, I know. And I'm very impressed with you. But I was just kicked aside for your fun activities. But I'm over it. I've dealt with it. Therapy is really good for things like this. But anyway, the you missed, and you get it on, what is it, YouTube?
The Kicklighter Medieval History channel on YouTube.
That would be wonderful because you would get to hear the Frank. You missed that Frank performance. It was excellent. Okay. Very, very good. I mean, I would just urge you, if you felt that barkers were more important than
And you
my
can
little
get a copy. You can buy a copy
efforts.
for $19.95. Just so you know.
Okay. Does that include the tax?
No.
Because because we have a lot, War Eagle. We need as much cash as we can get. So as far as this is concerned, I wanted Frank to end on a high note. It's like Henry V winning the battle, and then everybody's singing and like, yes, we love each other and this is wonderful, and we're, because it's all downhill from there. Okay, just want to warn you that Henry V will go down in history. So that's nice. But at that age, I doubt, well, I'm sure he thought about it, but he had more things than that to think about because he was only like mid to late 20s. So even in that day and age, I suspect people were very much concerned about the future. So he's got a few years left. He doesn't know that, but you and I know. And what he wants to do, of course, is continue his campaign to take over Normandy. Normandy, remember, home of William the Conqueror and what God intended that kings of England rule, that kind of thing. And of course, as we all understand, he had that great sense of destiny, that great sense of divine calling. I've often wondered, if people like that get up in the morning and say, "Hi, God, just want to make sure we're on the same page here. I'm your special agent." I still am, right? Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, maybe it's a slight character flaw, not to, just so that we appreciate it. But this idea of being one of the great kings, I'll give him that. He's not religiously tolerant. I think you will remember when he witnessed the burning of his Lollard friend, Sir John Oldcastle, for expediency, I would say, although I assume he was pretty serious about his religious faith. But in terms of all of these kings with whom he's connected, he was successful And you can see on that first map the area where he was operating, and you will understand that he was going back and forth from Normandy to England because of you know what, fundraising, advancement. Yeah. Not always asking, but often he did. Because, I mean, if he called a parliament, you know, don't you figure those folks knew why they were there? But after the Battle of Agincourt, you know, he was like, you know, we always like to win, not lose, right? So if you were working in fundraising for, let's say, Alabama instead of Georgia, you just think, God, the money is going to pour in, you know, after Saturday. I'm just being crude and rude, but you get the idea. I would hate to be a Bulldog fundraiser after Saturday, right? I mean, to take, I know, I mean, I don't mean to be hurtful if any of you are Georgia fans, but you understand those jobs because everybody's going, yeah, we're bad, we're bad. Well, not so bad then, are you? And you say, but think about the wonderful School of Liberal Arts, the school of this, that, and the other. I mean, yeah, that's nice, but that doesn't bring in the cash. They don't want to write the checks. That's just telling you the truth. It's ugly, but it's true. So they loved him and they were willing to cough up for him. And he went back and forth, back and forth. He eventually did take enough of Normandy, along with his forces, that he could then move eastward. And remember, all of this has got to be done within just a few years because that's all he got. And he didn't know that, but I know it. You know it. So all of this is to say that he actually took Paris. You remember the Germans never did it in World War I, but he did it. And this meant that he had that sense of God wants me to rule. I have Paris. And you say, why did he have Paris? Well, because much of the French government, including the King of France, had been taken out thanks to the fact of this split among the great noble families. And again, this would have to do, you remember from last time, some of you, the Burgundians and the Orleanists, and they were the great families. They were like branches of the royal family. And you say, well, why can't we all just get along and love each other? Well, that's just not the way it is. So there's a lot of killing, a lot of unhappiness. And all of this is to say that the monarchy at this point was run by one family. Because you remember that the king was, in fact, mentally unstable. That's the best I can say for him. So that would allow for a very difficult situation for the French monarchy. So the French monarchy was sort of moved eastward. And Paris now was taken by the English forces, I guess we could say, in tandem with perhaps some of the Burgundian people. I guess they didn't call it collaboration back then, but as you World War II buffs know, that would not have gone over too well during the 40s, but that's the way it was. The Burgundians, who didn't have control of the monarch, we're playing footsie with the English. So you think that does seem like collaboration. Whatever. Sometimes people just like whoever's ahead, right? And that's exactly the way it was for the situation in Paris. In any event, now a delegation led by the king himself, our young Henry VI, went to see the poor king, King Charles VI, and in his condition, mentally speaking, which was not good, and I suspect there were people who were more or less assisting him with negotiations, let's put it as nicely as we can, came up with an agreement that was very, very useful for Henry. And it becomes very important in history. This is called the Treaty of Troyes, Troyes. It's over in the Champagne part of eastern France. Some of you have been there, I suspect. And again, the reason he's there, the French are there, is because they got basically lost Paris. But that's why we have the meeting. I guess Henry wanted to be polite to an older king. And they met. I mean, before, that's not their first time. But this must have been a very strange situation from different generations. That is, Charles being the older and saying, you remember when we talked about my daughter marrying you? And he said, yeah, those were I remember. And that's that kind of thing. So that is what will happen. More or less, in this very odd situation, there at Troyes, they will conclude that Henry will marry the next daughter available. I mean, it's almost like next, who's up for getting married? Because we've already had, remember the older one? Because they talked about, is she up to now? I think, she's already been married to one of y'all named Richard II. So she's not available this time. But we got a younger one, and this will be Catherine. So we will have the marriage. 16, 17, something of that. I know, but you're thinking Charles VI has teenage daughters. Yeah, they had lots and lots of offspring. He and Isabella. In any event, it's great. Love, June, orange blossoms. We know all that. But more importantly, Henry, you want to be king of France? Yeah, I'm dying to it. But you got to wait until my health fails. You know how they say it? Your health fails. And I'm working out. I'm on a low carb diet. All of that. I'm really hoping to be around. Well, I don't know if he said that, but basically the idea is you can't be king until I'm no longer around. I wonder how long the negotiation went on over there. Because, it's like very many people we know from this generation. They want it now. They don't want to wait and say, yeah, those big titles I'm not into that right now. I'm young. I'll work hard and stay late for work. Someday I'll be executive vice president. That kind of, no. Want it now. So can you imagine? Yeah, it's real nice. I'm excited about the wedding, whatever. But I can't be king now. No, you got to wait until I'm dead. Like I say, I'm at the gym early and I'm feeling great. I don't think he said all that, but the idea is, wasn't there already somebody else who was going to be king? Son, come in. I've got to talk to you about something. Could you imagine what that was like? This, of course, is the future Charles VII. He's an interesting character, Dauphin. He apparently had been involved in conspiracies, possibly with those who wanted to take over the throne. And so, oddly, the king and queen didn't really care for it. I mean, this is a Valois melodrama, if you will, but basically, it's announced in this agreement at Troyes that he's no longer the Dauphin. And you think if you were Charles VII, how would you feel? I mean, Mama, it's me. And you'd say, you were a boo-boo. I mean, yeah, I had another friend. I know this could be something out of Harlequin, not something you would read, but because this was definitely rated R or something. Yeah, torrid, lurid. I could use a lot of other words, but the idea is you are not getting the throne. We love our new English son-in-law to be. And he's going to be King of France. If I should die. Or when I should die. All of this then means we've got that. You say, yeah, but that's not quite what he wanted. He wanted it all now. What do they call that in psychology? Delayed gratification. Yeah, I think that's what it would be. But he got busy being fruitful. And he did well. Yeah, right off the bat. Pretty quick, too. I mean, you know, it's like didn't have to work a long time. They got married, and wham, a little one is coming our way. And this would be the famous Bambino, who would be known as Henry VI. He didn't get a lot of time to spend with Dad. If that was his father, you know, they always make claims, single parent, you know, child and all of that, because poor Henry was not of this world very long. He impregnates his new wife and then dies shortly thereafter. His son is months old at the time of the death of Henry V. Is that not a weird situation when you think about it? And all of this means that Henry V never got to say, I'm King of France, I'm King of England. God and me have got it all worked out. No, that is one of the cruelest mysteries of history, isn't it? That he would never live to see it. The idea of a King of England now being King of France. Because, of course, guess what happened? Charles VI actually outlived him. That's what you get, I guess, for going on that strict low-carb diet and working. It worked a few months for Charles VI. And that's all it was. I mean, bummer if you were Henry V. Yeah, because don't you know he was irritated when they said, I'm sorry, we've done all we can. He said, oh, please, can you try again? Yeah. So he died, and that darn Henry, or rather the father-in-law, Charles VI, survived him. And then they were both out of the picture. So that's when our little Henry, and I do mean little, infant Henry will now become king of France. And as Frank indicated, this is very unique. So we have Henry VI being the fulfillment of his father's dream. Unfortunately, it had been his father's dream for himself, not for his son, but that's the way things go sometimes. So, I call him troubled. And you know, it's like you always start out thinking, let's try to think of some positive things. And I will. I'm going to get to that. But we have to start out by, I just love this. Spectacularly inadequate. Yeah, can you imagine getting an evaluation? Well, you couldn't, but I mean, many of us lesser people might get a bad. Yeah, but that just really, that would be so hurtful if you got an evaluation like that. When you think about the rank, and why is it these kings like Charles VI in France and now Henry VI in England primarily, they are going to be like the worst of the worst in terms of kings. You know, it's interesting, and they live on and on. It may have vitamins, I don't know what, just keeps them going, and you think too much going to the gym. Why can't you have diseases? Something happened to you. I say the good die young. I don't know about that, but it is, in fact, an idea of a very long period in which he was not really the ruler. Because, of course, he's just a child. So, as such, I might add, he goes to church a lot. So he definitely devoted to all aspects of their religion. His relationship with his mother always fascinates me, because I'm thinking, would you think that she would say, I want to tell you stories about your dad. You'd be so proud of him. And as you go, or would you say, I want to tell you more stories about your granddad? He had some issues, but he was French, and remember, you're King of France too. I don't know. I guess we'll never know. I know this, that people were very suspicious of the Queen Mother. That seems unfair, doesn't it? I mean, it's not her fault, but she had a child. So she stays. Remember her sister, who had been the Queen of Richard, or Queen of Richard II. Remember, she got shipped back home. That's because she had no children. And so you say, why are you shipped home? Well, you haven't got a kid. So you not have no more value. But Catherine of Valois will have value because she was the mother. How odd, Dan, that her own brother had been dispossessed. It's just a very, very weird situation. I mean, it wouldn't be on the Waltons or some kind of family show that everybody, because yeah, could you imagine a Thanksgiving like that? I've seen some really rough ones, but that would be just too much. I mean, hello, how are you? I mean, I don't think people could even stay for dessert for the mincemeat pie. It's like they would be out of there. I mean, Valois, you Lancaster, that kind of thing, ugliness at a time of joy. But yeah, we're not going to share any time together because English forces are still trying to take over and rule what they have. Because technically, whether Henry VI is a child, he is still, according to English and their collaborators, he is the legitimate king of France by that Treaty of Troyes. Now, what are they going to do? Well, there will be a regency, and that regency will be led by, and I'm going to have to use the term, which we all know, it may occur sometime today, but it occurred then. Nepotism. I hope you don't know any of nepotists, but there are some. I've heard of that. Yeah. Nepotism is clear. You just look. They're his uncles. Those were the younger brothers of Henry V, survived. One would take over France, one would take over England. Charles VII, the future Charles VII, was in southern France, not doing the Riviera, but doing basically a time, well, it was in Provence, that was still under Valois control, probably brooding about, I've got to get things. I've got to become king someday, even though I was basically kicked out by my own father and mother, I might add. So the idea will be that these uncles, and Bedford was the great military leader and would run English operations in France, and Gloucester, and they even have the Duke Humphreys room in the Bodleian Library at Oxford. So in case you ever go, be sure and bring it up to the tour guide because they will be very impressed. And you could just say, humbly, I know all about the Duke Humphreys room. Wow, you bloody Yank. They will be very impressed at your great knowledge. Those Beauforts, thank you, John of Gaunt. They just won't go away, will they? They're around and they share in the government. And they participate as well in the Beauforts. And we'll meet more Beauforts coming up, but it's to bear in mind that all of this would have been too much for any one family member. So they kind of divvy up authority, these governing councils. I'm not sure Humphrey of Gloucester was all the way honest, I'm thinking if he took the Rotarian oath, I think he might get in trouble because it's like he sometimes might have scammed, isn't that what they call it? Yeah, it's when you take money that's not yours. And I know, just such evil, but not from us, but from them. So that's Humphrey of Gloucester. But all of these people, shall we say, enjoyed their position. And John was a very fine military man, as I understand it. All of this then is to say that they did the best they could during those early years. And they had some issues because, as we all know, we don't have to just think about what's going on today. Wars are expensive. You can't have a war on the budget plan, can you? Yeah, it's like, and as long as Henry V was around, I think maybe it was a little easier. And all of those churches and abbeys were pitching fundraisers and so forth and so on. But you do run out after a while. So this was hard. How were the French feeling about all of this? Mixed feelings, I suspect. But this has been going on quite a long time already. During the years of Henry V and now moving on. There's good reason they call it the 100 Years' War, right? And it does seem that way, even though there's nothing quite as spectacular as Agincourt. Look at the little type. Yes. 10-ish maybe. I know. And, sort of like Mayor, Pear. I'm glad Mayor could be here, but she probably didn't get a front row seat. They probably made her sit in the back. You Frenchy, that kind of thing. They could be rude. Valwalla. Yeah, but he will now be the ruler. And how about getting crowned at Notre Dame? Not bad, huh? You say, but wait, I already know from French history that's not normally where people are crowned. I know, but it's the best we can do. I mean, it's not bad. I mean, Napoleon got crowned there and he didn't like it. But we'll have more to say about that later. And now, of course, you think we have got it made. We've now been crowned. Cute, making good grades. A in theology and canon law. I mean, you can't beat this. My grades are good. The bishops say I just get an A in lay leadership of the church. I mean, just really everything seems to be going well. Not so much at all. Now, of course, we think about Charles VII to be. You think he gets a bad rap sometimes? You think maybe he deserves it. I don't know. The idea, and I suspect you remember that he had in fact conspired against his own father with the Duke of Orleans. I mean, against the forces. They'd actually taken him out, the Duke of Burgundy. You know what I mean? Like a hit, like something out of The Sopranos. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's like you're thinking like the Dauphin would have been at the game. And there's talk about it. I mean, it was like maybe if France had the papers, I guess the French version of Confidential or something. Whatever the case, it brought about a certain difficulty for Charles in terms of gaining enough support, because there were many, might have said, well, let's give these Lancastrians a chance. Maybe having a French Valois is not such a good idea. So Charles had his work cut out for it. But this is the builder. There would be someone to help.
Oh, yeah.
And you say, who could it possibly be? Yes. I know you were just waiting. Joan of Arc. I've kind of trimmed down my Joan of Arc part today. I don't want to get too far gone in that. I think it's interesting. As the book says, some people, not everybody, some people would call this a bit romantic and all about French nationalism. And I might add that she was not given the status of sainthood until the 20th century. But I'll let it go at that. Yeah, okay? Just, yeah. The state argument against, but no doubt she's very interesting. Very interesting. And the idea, of course, is that in the years of Bedford, after the death of Henry V, she will be responsible for, not to belittle whatever military accomplishment she made, but basically a cheerleader for Charles. And of course, it had to have religious overtones, right? I mean, you couldn't just say, well, I think he would be a better leader. I took this course in military science and tactics, and this is, no, we understand it's going all to be all about a religious thing. God, well, we've all read our Joan of Arc books, I'm sure. I did all that as a child. But the idea is she's called by God and the saints as a peasant girl to lift up Charles and get him off his you know what, because we're all about France. Go Big V, Valois. Okay. See, suppressed cheerleader. It's all about that. So she then brought it about that he would be crowned in that traditional place, Rennes, over in the east. And this was the traditional place. They put a great store on this. So she said, but I got here first. I mean, Notre Dame, Henry. Yeah, but that was just a fake. See, this is the real thing, and all those French are there with. So this becomes a big thing about la patrie. You think, so you're tying this into French nationalism? Maybe, a wee bit. But all of this is going to have much to do with this theme of accepting loss by the English, and they are far from that. Merely because, and believe me, Joan of Arc comes and goes, doesn't she? She fought, or supposedly helped lead Charles VII's forces, and was captured and provided by Burgundians to the English for a price, and then would be promptly executed, burned because she refused to renounce her beliefs or her teachings. And she, of course, was viewed as a heretic. So all of this would be very useful when the Catholic Church in France was having problems with the French government in the 1920s and decided to give her the top-notch billing. But even at the time, she was venerated somewhat. Again, a combination of hero of France. And, you always say, how much did Charles VII do to honor her? I'm doubting much at all. He took a chance, though. I mean, some of us may have seen the old films and movies about her and how she goes brazenly to the then brooding Charles, thinking, gosh, I'll never get to be king, darn it. And then she says, basically, get up, you got to do this. It's all about France, all of that. And then, does he make any efforts to post bail or get her out and say, I know she's sorry for anything she said bad about the English and their food, which is not good. But all of this is to say that she was just like a memory. And I'm going to show you something, and I know there will be a fierce debate when I do, but I love controversy. So I want you to remember 1944. Yes. I know. There have been many portrayals. Got something about my favorite Swede. This is Ingrid Bergman. Now, if you're young, you may not be familiar with Ingrid Bergman. Ingrid Bergman was one of the greatest of all film stars. You need to know this. This is part of learning about the 20th century.
Yeah.
We of the 20th century venerate her. She is the venerable Ingrid Bergman.
She got promoted.
Yes, I've decided. But there's so many people who've done this role, and I thought, why must we cling to those earlier interpretations? I don't know. I just really loved her. And you remember when she was in all those Hitchcock movies and all of that. We'll have a separate lesson for you. We're going to have an Ingrid Bergman tutorial. You'll need this and you'll be thankful. Sir.
I was stationed in the army in Orleans, France, and in the middle of the town, they had a huge statue of Joan of Arc on a horse, the horse was rearing up. So we GIs just called her Joni on her pony.
Oh my God. But you didn't say that to any of the folks, did you? I love it. But imagine t-shirts, postcards, all that stuff. I mean, if you're working for the Orleans Chamber of Commerce nowadays, because I think it's still a popular attraction.
Sure.
Friends of mine. But the idea being, again, that Joan of Arc becomes a major figure. And her death does not necessarily end the French surge. It's really just the beginning. And, here today, gone tomorrow, that's kind of like Joan of Arc. But when you think of all the movies, all the books, she gets a lot of attention. In part, of course, it has to do with being a female warrior, being a child, peasant, no less. I mean, it's not as if she could read or I'd love to check out one of those Lollard Bibles. I don't think so. This is all it's a very interesting story. Let's put it that way. Now, here is another one of my favorite tourist sites. So I'm ready for you to go. King's College, Cambridge. Now, I like Oxford, but it's not that far between Oxford and Cambridge. Now, I don't drive up there. I let others do that because they don't drive to suit me. They violate the law. They speed. So all of this, and on the other side of the road too, yeah. That's why the Lord made buses. So the idea of King's College, Cambridge, and you'll see Henry VI right there in the middle. And you can go to Cambridge University, to King's College, and say to the tour guide, and say, tell me all you know about Henry VI. Those eyes will get big and be impressed. Oh, you Yank, you know about Henry VI? You're going to win the battle of no more ugly America, not because of you. The idea, in fact, is that he founded King's College. So quite a bit is made of him. But I'm wondering if youngsters today at Cambridge would go, oh, yes, you mean the last Lancastrian? I'm quite familiar with it. I'm not so sure. But the idea of this is that, which is true, Henry VI grew up thanks to tutors, including his mother, with a great love of learning. He just went into the military. And you said, but Dad was, I know, but that was him. But I prefer to study and go to libraries. I'm a bibliophile. Yeah, I mean, that's nice, but it's not the way that I think Dad would have preferred it. But anyway, all of this means that this became a major project for him. And he lived to be, almost 50. Can you imagine getting to be that old? I can't. I mean, that's just shocking to think of 50. Yeah. Oh, but the idea is, poor Henry, I felt it necessary not to be negative, because sometimes all you hear about, spectacularly inadequate and other negative things. And I want you to have a nice something to say when you're at Cambridge and you say, yeah, I know about your King Henry VI. And they'll be touched that you care. Maybe. But anyway, that is the idea. His inheritance, shall we call it, from the Valois side will begin to develop when he's, I hate to say 25 or 30, you're in midlife, but I guess I know the life expectancy, it's like you're moving on. And those signs, and what are the signs? The signs are, of course, that there are mental lapses. I mean, he returns, but it may be months, even up to a year, when it happens. I wish that I knew more comparing Charles VI's condition, but obviously it skipped with the next generation, but passed through his mother. fascinating study of DNA, I would think. In any event, we've got him overwhelmed by his military responsibilities. Oh, yes, and he loves to shop, as we would say now. Loves to buy things that he can't afford, and and you think, well, he can, yeah, but still, probably more spending than he needs to be, or even as we would call it today, and at least we did in the 80s, deficit spending. It's like they used to be considered so naughty. And the idea is maybe when you think about giving to higher education, it's a good way to spend money. I don't know. Especially if they put a statue of you.
Yeah.
Right, that I could go for. Yeah. So that's very, very nice. Do you think I'm through with King's College? Oh, no.
Oh,
No, there's more. Ooh, close up. Yeah. So why do we need a close up? Henry VI. There. And I'll be honest, I think that's one of the prettiest colleges in Cambridge, my opinion. What do I know? But it's a beautiful place, not that far from London. So you could just make a quick trip over and hang out there too. But all of this, and again, I'm sure the students will be just so impressed by your knowledge of 15th century history. And of course, many of us have heard the King's College Chapel at holiday time. That's always a big to do. So they are, I don't guess it's all boys now, but used to be the King's College Choir, and they do all the holiday songs. I don't mean jingle bells, but you know, Adeste Fidelis and all of that. And of course, is that not something? That make folks go to church, you would think. But I don't know about so much anymore. But it's a beautiful attraction, and this is where you want to see it, and that's where the Church of England has its services, and that's why they have the choir. And I think it's on NPR, it's where those concerts are recorded and provided for Americans, the Yanks.
could be on YouTube.
Oh, that, yeah. You mean the older ones, or I meant the current? Because I mean, they do it every year. So I'm thinking about, it is truly amazing though, that all of this kind of place. Now, how much of this actually occurred in his reign, I'm not so sure, but he put the sort of gears in motion, because Cambridge and Oxford came about at a much earlier time, but still, he deserves a lot of credit. So despite, shall we say, some deficiencies in Rulership 101, we have to mention about the fact that Henry, and he loved his books, he loved his study. And you just say, Ave Maria, rosary beads, he's there. Okay. Loved the church, loved all the services. And you come around and say, Your Majesty, we're setting up a special fund for poor Catholic children or something. You say, yeah, I'll get a check out to you. That kind of thing. So definitely, and you say, what did he think about the English and French campaign? As little as possible. All of that tended to get on his nerves. It's like, oh, we have to do that. It's sort of like studying instead of going to on recess, and that kind of thing. It's just unfortunate that Henry Fifth didn't have time to have more children. Yeah, but that's the breaks. All of this is to say that in at least one area, because that is just amazing to think about. And it would be interesting to know how often it's used, so the services for the choir, but another story. King's College Chapel. That's amazing, isn't it? When you think about something this elaborate, you say they're just going to church, but yeah, this is a little bit much, more than just going to church, right? I know. It couldn't last. Another tree. And yes, a big tree. And a tree you'll be glad that you'll have an opportunity to see. Now you may have to, some of us have to use glasses, but is there any possibility is this capable of raising it? No. Okay, well, I'll go over here then and just point out some things. These Yorks, the Yorkist clank was a very solid one, because they were not Lancastrians. They were Yorkists. Get it? Lancastrians, Yorkists. And the Yorkists were descended from two sides. And you're thinking, how could that happen? It's the darndest thing you ever heard of. See, Lionel, Antwerp. Antwerp's a nice place to go. You've been there.
Like it.
So there he is. See, and they had a daughter, Philippa. See, she's married to one of those infernal Mortimers. Yeah. They pop up. Anytime you get one of these English trees, there's a Mortimer hanging right. Now they get around to provide, fertility. So that goes down there. There's another. See those Mortimers? Then here's Anne Mortimer. And there is Isabel Plantagenet. And then there's Richard Plantagenet. All of this, you'll be thankful to know, you do not have to memorize. We talk about painful. I mean, that would be very painful. But the idea of these Yorkists, I think there's one in there that's perhaps not as detailed, but it's got enough to make, if you're a Yorkist, member of this family, and you're probably thinking, I don't think you would say this in public, but you would be saying about the Henrys, they're okay. I mean, there is some hostility. I mean, you don't come out and say it, but you just say, should have been me, that kind of thing.
Your word.
Yeah. Because Yorkists are doubly related to Edward III. That's how far back it goes. Two different segments. You say, well, how could that be? Well, they didn't have this restrictions. You know how folks have blood tests before yeah. They weren't so worried about DNA back then. So you have lots of, yeah. So we won't pursue that. But just to understand that this will lead to Yorkists and the idea of how that they're always going to be there. And it's sort of like, there was this old song when I was young. If you ever need, I can help, And that's what the Yorkists are doing. And I'm never sure if they're sincere. But that's the claim. We're here because we love England too. And we respect you ever so much. I don't know. But the Yorkists are there. And it is, as you can see, all the way down. And we will get to Edward IV eventually. But right now, I just want you to be aware of Richard Plantation. And you'll notice Cecily Neville. That will all become important to us soon enough. Just note it. And then Richard has a sister, Isabel. And notice that Richard and Isabel are descended from a Mortimer, right? I mean, yeah, these folks get together. You said maybe they ought to go around and date people from other families more, but they don't. They know because all of this is pretty well set up and arranged. If you want to fool around, you don't do it for the purpose of reproducing. You just do it to have a good time. This is serious. This, of course, has to do with inheritance of titles and lands, not some long weekend. Yeah. So all of this is to say that's where the Yorkists come from. And how far, again, Lionel goes all the way back to Edward III. So it's definitely, you can't say anything about me because you wonder about the Lancastrians or more or less Johnny come latelys. Because you're not like us Yorkists. You know, I've often wondered, do people really sit around and talk about this like it's a DAR meeting and who's going to get into, have you got the right genealogy? You know how people fuss about that. You know, I'll never forget doing research in London and seeing people there work on those genealogies because everybody's convinced they're descended from nobles, I guess. Glad I was from peasants. So, you know, there are no records of my people, but the idea being that a lot of the research into these genealogical things very interesting. And I don't know how this was all maintained. I guess church people did it. Because these folks aren't, you don't think they're sitting around going through records saying, you know, we're descended from Edward III and his first wife. I find this very doubtful. I think they like to fight. They must like to have children. They had enough of them. And nice parties, go to church. But all of this has to do, of course, with these people. So we come to Richard, Duke of York, who is older than the king. And he's going to have a rival for, shall we say, the attention of the monarch. Because obviously, he's a cousin. We love our cousin. And he has a place to play. I mean, you can't just say, if you are little Henry, should I call him young Henry? You can't say, oh, Uncle Rita, I'll let you know if we need your help. This is a constitutional thing. It's like, I have the right to be part of the council. And these Yorkists, remember, descended from two bloodlines of the Plantagenets. So they have their claim. You don't have to come in and say, I've got a wonderful education and what is it, public administration. I don't think that. I've got the army, I'm powerful. You don't want to mess with me. I'm your Uncle Dickie. And I want my authority. But you may have that, but then there's somebody who's closer. We'll just call him the Duke of Somerset because that's the title he gets. And who is he? He's one of those darn Beauforts. They keep coming up like a bad penny. That's an old expression when pennies used to be significant. And are you familiar with it? It's just like we used to say
No, running
that.
through my head, how do you have a bad penny?
I know. We'll go into that at another time, the study of coinage. But the idea being that there seems to be a Beaufort everywhere. Now, this particular Beaufort was like a nephew of Henry Cardinal Beaufort. I mean, they're coming in. And remember, they are descended from John of Gaunt, and they were little no-nos, because remember, he wasn't married to the mother. And they could do, but they had a special parliamentary understanding that while they couldn't be king, they could do everything else. So, you need help? I'm here for you. And I want to help you. You want help. You need help. I'm going to give you help. Yeah, it's amazing. And that will create between these two a power struggle. This is so like duel in Dodge City. There's not room enough for both of us. Like something off one of our TV series during our childhood, that kind of thing. Somerset versus York. I find it very fascinating to think of the great power that Somerset enjoyed. You see more that the Yorkists do. But given Henry's disinterest in most things as long as he got his way, enjoyed going to Cambridge, I guess, to see about the college and studies and intellectual activities and the church. Don't forget the church. All of this would be a very, very difficult business. Meanwhile, the government in France, that is the English government in France, was not doing well at all. It's like the almost disappearing English territory in France. And it's like, but we had so much. I know. That was Henry V. Now we have the incredibly diminishing English France. Is it because of Charles VII? I don't know. I think it's partially because those two brothers, Orleans and Burgundy, finally got together. I don't mean they liked each other. They're not coming, no turkey and mincemeat pie for you. But we at least are on the same side. Because I think the Burgundians finally decided the English weren't going to make it. And then, of course, Bedford died. And then Humphrey of Gloucester died in England. So basically, the government was taken over by Somerset. And again, if you were Richard of York and you're on the Royal Council But Somerset is sort of presiding. And what's the king doing? Well, he's having a good day or a bad day, or he's saying to Hail Mary. It's like he's kind of out there. All of this means there will be serious problems, particularly because, and we're now in the 1430s, if you think about it. And we're thinking about the king is still a bachelor. Yeah, I mean, I'd really rather just go to church and hang out with monks and, that kind of thing. And he said, well, maybe you could go on one of the dating sites and meet some cute, cool chicks, hot chicks. No, maybe not. Instead, some people were saying, oh, sir, we so admire your chastity. You're so pure. Oh, here's another one. Ivory soap, 99 and 44% pure. That's an old commercial. Just for you. But the idea being that that's the way he was going to be. And who you spent is leading the chastity website? Richard of York. And why don't we want him to be fruitful? Well, you know why. Because fruit will be competition for me. Because I should be king because Henry is a loser. He is an idiot, both figuratively and literally. So all of this then is to say they have big dreams. The Yorkists. So what's a Somerset to do? Well, of course, there is an answer. I love this poetry. I wonder how much she looked like that. Okay, now you're saying, was she old enough to get married? Well, shoot, yeah, she's going on 15. I mean, what do you want? How old do you want her? I mean, yeah, she's got all the learning she's gonna need. So her father, Rene of Anjou, was like a younger brother of Charles VII. You say, oh, well, she's a Valois. Yeah, but it's like lower, lower Valois. Because if we rate them, it's like you're not on the first rate Valois, top notch Valois. Rene had lots of titles. Guess what? King of Naples, kind of honorary. Would that not be nice? Wouldn't you like to be a Neapolitan king? I'm just saying. Sounds impressive. Big interest in Sicily. But all that's nice if you're a male. But if you're a female, gotta get a husband. Or get thee to a convent, right? So all of this means that she is available. She's getting to 15. And Henry VI, I guess he's about 24. So did they date? Did they hang out? I don't think so. I think just met. How you doing? Good to see you. I love Sicily. Small talk. Your dad, Rene, is really special. All of that. And then you get down to negotiations because she's going to be cut rate because it's not like you're getting the first line, like Isabella or something, like you would be getting some sort of member of the French king, you're getting a niece. I mean, that's okay, but it's not top notch. Okay. So it's the economy model. But still, that's got to be covered because there are payments to be made. You know, all this isn't for free. So Margaret comes. I guess she had some English lessons and had to be. Can you imagine? I mean, I don't think she had a lot of knowledge about all this. But she now comes at a very difficult time. I can't imagine. Because Margaret of Anjou is one of the most famous women in English history. And think about the series. Have you seen any of those series where she figures in HBO or Showtime or whatever those series are? Whatever. She is such a major figure. Oh, the Queen of Hearts or something like that. I don't know. All of this, inevitably, they call these people the she-wolf. You always have to get wolves involved because Margaret will be married to someone who is mentally indisposed, with whom she's not spent a lot of time, and it's good before you get married, I would think, to spend some time with the fiance. But she just has English 101 and she's over there. And of course, you can imagine at 15, I guess they all told her, you got job number one. You got to have a baby, you know, because you can do other things. You have other projects, or activities, or whatever. But you get busy with that ending. Yeah, amour. You know, all of that. And he said, oh, this is so romantic. Not really. I don't think this is romantic at all. Basically, when she gets there and you're thinking, everybody's so happy to see. Well, I don't think Uncle Dickie is. Because Richard said, boy, you know, she's attractive. And she might get pregnant. You know, and there's always been stories about this, whether or not inevitably she would find other company and become pregnant by a liaison by you know who, that Beaufort. You say, should they have done that? Don't fight it. It's too powerful. Yeah. Yeah. But I won't say it, don't worry. But that idea of the Duke of Somerset was the claim. They just can't believe that Henry VI could have been the father. But whatever the case, she became pregnant fairly early on. I don't mean immediately, but fairly early on. And of course, Richard is furious. I'm sure he said, oh, I'm so excited about the blessed event and all of that, you know. I don't know all those things you say. The Duchess wants to give a shower. So, you know, you know how people can be. And he's going home and like punching a hole in the wall, thinking, darn it, that darn pregnancy, because I want to be king. That's Richard, Duke of York. And that Margaret, she begins to take things very seriously. Some argue that Margaret of Anjou comes in very innocently, and that could well be true. And maybe it was the pregnancy that would change everything. But clearly watching your husband fall apart and the possibility, remember, unless something happens with that son, you know where you're going? Back home. Ex-queen. And there's not going to be a pension. No golden parachute for you. Okay. So Margaret had a tough time. But once the baby is born, she will become serious. At first, in a maternal way. But then perhaps her political skills, possibly based on her father's teachings, will cause her to be more concerned about her husband's government. And Richard of York's clearly wanting to take power away from her, and clearly he did. By 1453, and that's the magic year. Now, you do need to know that one. You already know about the fall of Constantinople. Yeah. And the establishment of the Sultanate. Yeah. So you got that straight. But now, in addition, 1453 represents the final fall of Bordeaux. And you go, oh gosh, but I love wine. If you're 21. Gascon wines and the great production of wines in Bordeaux will be a very great economic loss for the government of Henry VI. They just couldn't keep it. You go, God, what would his daddy say?
Oh.
Oh, I know, it'd been ugly. But there you are. We still have Calais. We love Calais. Well, we did. But as far as down south, just a memory. Thanks for the memories. This song went. All of this then is to say that it's a great lull in terms of the mid 15th century and the end of the 100 Years' War. Because technically, even though the English keep Calais, most people would say, for intents and purposes, the war is over. Oh, I mean, the English will dream about it. We want it all back. You know, it's never saying like, oh, shucks, we lost. Let's all go to Virginia and be happy. No, I think it's going to be tough. Oh, my gosh. I know. Here are the Somersets. There's that Catherine Swynford. And again, this is supposed to be the love of his life. And he had that brood by her, John of Gaunt. Love children, or whatever you call them. And again, they were all legitimated by an act of parliament. And they were known as the Beauforts. And they did very well. There's Henry. And you see how well they did. And you see that they all landed very well in terms of their relationships. Henry, you say, died in 1447. Of course, celibacy, theoretical or real, would have to be carried out. He was a cardinal, after all. And that could be problematic if you suddenly turned up with a child. So all of this then, as you go way down, you say where we're going to end up in 2026 and the Tudors, the winter. I'm just trying to get you excited about the new year. All of this is to understand that these Beauforts have all kinds of connections. And if Somerset had been the father of Margaret's baby, he would have had a very important role to play. Well, he already played it, but still he had great interest. You say, was he single? No, they all had, marriages, but they had extracurricular activities too. So this is very, very significant. And if it's true, like all the novels like to tell us about, they had relationship with the queen, and that was the secret father. That would be very important. So finally, Duke of York, Duke of Somerset, and all of the interesting conflicts between the two. And now Margaret of Anjou enters the arena. And why does she enter the arena? Well, I guess Somerset's wants her there. They had a relationship of sorts. Henry VI, her husband, was mentally indisposed. She was in a position now as a mother that she felt she had to step in to preserve his rights, because Richard of York was right there. And again, let me remind you, Somerset's a Beaufort. Just don't forget that, because that's always, yes, he can strut around. You're just a love child. Yeah, remember that song? Yeah, it's like more or less, he's still pretty high and mighty, but don't ever forget those Beauforts, because they're around. And he had great influence with the queen, and let's just say they were mutually supportive. And at this time, Richard's saying, I'm so sick of both of you. Because remember, two, not one, like the Serbs. Breath mint, candy mint. It's like we have such great claims to the throne. So now we're going to get it. You've lost all the French territory. So now what do we do? And the answer is we go to war. And it will not be pretty. Like the Wars of the Roses, FTD, fighting and there for the nicest roses. No, very different. And we'll pick it up there next time. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.